everybody. Welcome back. Kicks Over Coffee, Andy Polk with FDRA. Thanks for joining us one more time. I'm really excited today to have on my friend Xavier from SGS. He is a subject matter expert when it comes to sustainability. We recently had one of our biggest conferences of the year, our Sourcing and Sustainability Conference in New York. And of course, he was on our panel once again. And I just thought he brought such great insights. So when a lot of people are talking about sustainability and what it is, and there's a lot of pie in the sky about different things. And Xavier was great about talking about little things that matter and little things that can be implemented to really create sustainable culture in companies. And I think that's really important. So Xavier, thank you for joining us today for Kicks Over Coffee. How are you today?
Thank you, Andy. I'm doing good. Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to
Of course.
do that. Yeah.
And of course, we both got our coffee while we talk about these topics. You have a nice espresso cup there, which I love.
Yeah, I went to reduction of the environmental impacts of my cup. I went smaller than you did.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, folks. But I need caffeine in the mornings, and I just love coffee. So with that, Xavier, let's talk really quickly. If companies are out there and they don't have, well, first of all, I should say we did a survey of the industry, and it was an honest survey. All the responses we got were very honest. So what we saw was only 1 in 3 companies actually have a sustainability program or measuring sustainability or are enacting some type of mechanism, process, idea about sustainability. And then to add to that, we also asked about knowledge base, and we found that 67% of the industry professionals who work in sourcing, materials development, design, really don't understand enough about sustainability in order to even, focus and move forward and progress on the issue. So if that's the case, and we've got 2/3 of the industry who are just looking to get started, what are some easy things, low-hanging fruit that people can start to grab at and think about to develop sustainability and think more sustainable?
All right. Yeah, definitely. The one of the key challenges that people will face first is to understand what sustainability means. And there's not only one definition. Every company will have its own definition, depending on their stakeholders, what their stakeholders are expecting, what their customers are asking for, and also what the people internally in the company, the management, the CEO, and then the workers, what type of definition they have around sustainability and how they feel about it. Mm-hmm. So the first thing is really to wonder, why are we doing that? Why are we working on sustainability? Why does it matter for us as individuals and for the company and for the brand? So, we speak about shoes, and if we look at numbers, we produce 25 billion pairs of shoes every year. That's, in average, 3 pairs of shoes per person on this planet. There were some numbers last week that were, especially for the US, 2.5 billion pairs of shoes.
That's right.
Which means 7 pairs of shoes per person in the US, which means that there are some people on this planet that don't have shoes. That's another problem. All those 25 billion pairs of shoes, today we're in a linear economy, meaning we extract raw material, we make those products, we buy them, we use them, and we dispose of them. Today, they go to landfill, they go to incineration. There's no recycling. Those products are not recyclable. They are recyclable. Everything is recyclable, but they are not economically recyclable because of the way they are made, because of the material that are in composition, and because of logistical aspects related to the recycling. So this linear economy that we are in, not only for shoes, but for consumer products in general, is just not sustainable. We are facing some significant challenges related to global warming. Climate is changing, and our industry have a significant role to play into that. We are having some impacts on the raw material extraction. We are having some impacts on the extinctions of species out there. We release microplastics in the waterways that are toxic for the environment, and that's just not sustainable. So the question is, as a brand, how can you have a program that can minimize the impacts that you have on the environment, and if possible, have positive impacts. And as an individual, if you're a designer, if you're in the sourcing team, if you're developing new material, what can you do as an individual to contribute to the sustainability journey? So really the first thing that costs nothing is to think about what sustainability means for you as a brand and for you as a team and for you as an individual with your own role into this complex topic that is making products.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because if we don't define it, then obviously everybody has a different idea about it, and you can't create goals that everybody can head towards and understand and all work together on, right?
And that absolutely. And then when you have this in mind, then you can start working on a strategy. And we're in a stage right now, if you're in the 2/3 of those companies that don't have a relevant strategy, a meaningful strategy, and an ambitious strategy, you're late. The economy is changing. The impacts of the cost of the raw material can have a significant impact on the business, and consumers are here. They are ready to. They are more educated. The new generation is very well educated when it relates to sustainability. So your consumers, your customers are going to be more and more ready to hear this message. So what can you do that costs nothing? There's, and I mentioned this last week, there are basically 3 key pillars that you can have in the company. You can work on your own operations. That's what we call the corporate sustainability. So you're a brand and you have, let's say, 1,200 stores around the world. The first thing you can do, and that many brands are already doing and retailers are already doing, is monitor the energy consumption, the water consumptions, the wastes that are generated by those stores. So measure, and then have some energy and water conservation initiatives in place. Things that cost nothing: changing the light bulbs, working on fixing the leaks, as we mentioned before. Just by monitoring, you will identify maintenance. So it's valid for offices and stores, and it's going to be also very relevant when we will speak about factories. So those things, honestly, it doesn't have a big impact on the environmental footprint of a product. But there's no small economies, there's no small improvement. When you add up all those little things that you can do store by store, making sure that when you're on Fifth Avenue in New York and it's 100 degrees out there, that the store doesn't have the door open and blasting the AC, yeah, that's great. People can just come in and they feel the cold on the on the walkway. But this is there's very little things that can be done for energy conservation that will have an impact on the bottom line. So that's the first aspect. Now, another area that is a little bit more challenging when we speak about product design. 80% of the environmental impacts of a product are determined at the design phase. So the choices that designers are going to make in terms of material content, in terms of the shape, the amount of material, are going to influence 80% of the life cycle impacts of a product. Which means that we need to educate the designers, we need to help them understand how they can make better design decisions. And that's where it's kind of challenging, because calculating and measuring the environmental impacts of a product, there are scientific methods, life cycle assessment, carbon footprinting, and the challenge is to translate those tools that are not easy to understand into a language that designers understand.
Right.
And there are some tools out there. I'm thinking about the Higg Index product module that comes from the Nike Material Sustainability Index that helps providing designers with simple metrics that when you change and when you use this material instead of this material, you can see if it's going in the right direction or not.
Right. So it's not like a like-for-like comparison. If you're using a dark, if you're looking at a knit and it's, black knit, and you're looking at 2 types from 2 suppliers, you can have an index. What you're saying is a number assigned to it, and it'll say this material is more sustainable, and you can make that decision there saying, well, we'll go with this material, right?
Exactly. So it's about like switching material, integrating new material, and innovation is going to play a significant role on designing sustainable products and more sustainable products. But also designers have a role to play on improving the durability of the products. Right. Depending on how you design the product, it's going to last longer, and making sure that you integrate in your technical specifications some ambitious goals in terms of durability. That's probably the fastest way you're going to reduce the environmental impacts of a product. I just worked with a brand that changed they are making high-end cotton t-shirts. They had a problem of durability just because of the location where the label was positioned. And after 30 washing cycles, there were some holes that were appearing in the back of the polo. Just by changing the location of the label, they multiplied by 2 the lifespan of the product. Now, same washing type, like the product sustains 60 washes. So it's a very small design improvement that have a significant impact. It reduces by 40% the life cycle impacts of the product. And this is valid for shoes. The choice that you make in terms of like the sole and the way you fix the sole on the product, and making sure that you do those durability testing to anticipate what's going to happen and what's going to make the product weak is key to improve the durability.
That's a great, and I think we should stop there and really highlight that, because I think it's well within all of our knowledge bases on durability, on choosing materials and understanding the testing. And in our industry, we've got folks who have been doing sourcing and production for decades, so they understand all that really well. And basically what we're saying is, if you could add an extra month to the life of a pair of shoes by adding a little bit better material or changing things just a little bit to get more use out of it, more life out of it, that in itself can be considered being sustainable by giving it one extra month before it goes into the landfill.
Absolutely. And one extra month times 25 billion pair of shoes. So now, it comes the challenge with the business model we are in. Today, the business is based on how many products you sell. That's what your revenue is coming from. And I highly recommend people to download the guide that Nike released a few weeks ago about the principle of circular design. If we want to fix ambitious goals towards sustainability related to shoes and consumer products in general, we need to think now about circularity, and how do we get out of this linear economy model we are in, to close the loops and make sure that the products in the end of life are not going to end up in a landfill, but that they are going to become the new resources for a new product. After durability, this is the most important goal that companies should have in terms of medium-term and long-term goals. It's not an easy task. In a pair of shoes, there are 12, 15 different materials that are glued together, that are not easy to separate. Right. That's what makes that they are not recyclable. Now, when you look at what the work that Nike did, and one of the key challenges is how can we reduce the number of different materials we have in a pair of shoes, and innovate on the way we process those materials. So let's say you can make a pair of shoes only with PU, with polyurethane, and work on the manufacturing process so that the sole and the rest of the shoe is made of only one material. In the end of life, you just have to go into a grinder, and you start with brand new raw material where you solve the challenge of the separability of those materials. And now you can collect the products, and it doesn't cost much money, and it costs less money to recycle the products in their end of life, rather than extracting new raw material and making new products from virgin material. We need to find a way to go into this direction. It's going to take a lot of work on innovation, material processing, developing new material that allows us to reach this goal, but we have to get there. That's a no-brainer. Last week, somebody mentioned we need to learn designers to design to manufacture.
Right.
I would say we already need to learn to teach designers how to design to recycle.
Right.
That's the next step, but that's where we should be.
I completely agree. We had a design summit last fall where we discussed, one of the key sessions was designing to complete life cycle. And that was one of the first times I think a lot of folks have started to think about designing with sustainability in mind, with recyclability in mind, what that looks like. So I think that planted the seeds. We're having another designer summit in New York in November at FIT, and that will continue to be a main theme of, I think first we gotta throw out the seeds and start watering it to get it to grow a little bit, right? So the idea has to be planted, and then in doing so, hopefully we can get people together and start sharing best practices to doing that. Because I think that's the other thing too is, I hope what happens is as we look at these changing our processes and innovations, I hope people don't lock it down. I hope they don't claim it as their own IP or to the planet. They actually unlock it and give it to other people, and allow them to see what they did, and then use it for their own purposes and their own branding and things like that. But that we don't necessarily lock down these ideas and these processes.
That's a great point. Like when we work on this, it has to be done in a collaborative way, and it has to be a pre-competitive discussion that we have between brands to say, okay, we have a common problem. We can only solve it if we work together. Right. And how can we put the first stones, like in a pre-competitive way, to set up this industry for success towards circular economy? It can only be done if we all work together.
Right. And I guess so. Just to sum up some of this stuff, just being mindful. What one you were talking about? One was create a definition, like make sure everybody understands, from the guy at marketing all the way up to the designers, to producers, to anybody in the buildings and all retail associates, anybody in the company, they understand, we define sustainability in this manner, and these are some of the goals around that, so that you get everybody on the same page. And then start focusing, kind of on what we considered low-hanging fruit, being more mindful about energy and waste consumption at headquarters, at retail outlets, also at factories. I mean, factories too, where I think one of the easiest things where people can start is probably asking factories for measurements, right? What's your waste? What's your emissions? Have you guys thought about, setting up programs for wastewater recycling, et cetera? FDRA is trying to work on a pilot program to look at that and think about how we can help factories better understand how to implement these things. But I think simply just starting to see what your footprint is a little bit, you can get better ideas. And then, as you said, some of the larger companies, of course, have been doing this in a long time, are far beyond the measuring, and they're already in the implementation of trying to figure out how they restructure processes. And so the good thing is, I think there's a lot of work being done on this, and people are being very mindful, and hopefully, just even by us having this conversation is planting seeds in people's minds to think a little bit differently about how we work and live and play and how we think about our footwear, right?
Yeah, and because you mentioned the supply chain, the manufacturing locations, I have a few words to say about that. It's fundamental. 70% of the environmental impacts of a non-leather pair of shoes are associated with the manufacturing processes. So it's super important for brands to first learn about their supply chain, not only their tier 1 suppliers, but dive into the supply chain and know their tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers. And then start monitoring what they do in terms of environmental management. Many of the leading brands out there, especially in the outdoor industry, the sports wear, are already working closely with their key suppliers, monitoring every year their energy consumption, water consumption, and empowering them to find solutions to improve. We need to get out of this model where factories are just here to make products at the cheapest cost as possible. Brands have a huge responsibility to empower the suppliers to say, listen, we need you, we need your help. As a brand, if you make improvements on the way you make those products, it's going to reflect on our products, going to reflect on the durability of our products. It's going to reflect on the footprint of our product. We're going to benefit from it. But to do so, you need to pay the factories in a fair way. Factories out there that we visit every year that are paid properly implement amazing initiatives that significantly, they have water recycling systems where everything is closed loop. They barely use water from outside the factory. They have green chemistry, and they invest in purchasing chemicals that are safer. They work on implementing renewable energy. They produce their energy locally on the factory, and they don't rely on the energy mix from the country where they are located, because usually this energy mix is pretty nasty. So empower them, choose manufacturers that are doing better things on sustainability. That's going to significantly help your brands. Yes, it might cost a little bit more, and that might have some impact on your pricing strategy, etc. But in terms of sustainability, that's super important.
Well, we did see the NPD Group ran numbers from consumers, and there was, we've talked about it internally, but I think it was something like the age groups 18 to 34 were willing to pay a little bit more money. And of course, that age group, as it gets older, will just expand, right? Because the newer generation, of course, will be for that. But I would think if you're adding a little bit more durability and better qualities, then you could bump up the price a little bit more anyway, because you can tell that story that, instead of getting 6 months use out of this product, you're going to get 7 or 8. So, of course, it costs a little bit more, but you're getting more value out of it. So I think in that terms, I think we just need to reassess how we look at ROI and pricing today. And I think if people think about it and start working on different things, they'll find the value for the consumer, and they'll find the right price for the consumer in those things. And I know, we set up a new website, shoesustainability.com, where we're trying to give people ideas and thoughts and resources on this sort of stuff. And there's a section where we have responsible sourcing organizations that are out there working on the material level and also in factories to help folks. And of course, SGS is a big provider of services worldwide, where you guys go into factories and help factories understand sustainability and compliance and productivity. And you guys do great work. And I know Paul Bridge is constantly out in factories all over the world too. Our friend Paul, we always talk to. So I think, I hope people go and find that as a good resource. I hope they find this is a thoughtful conversation, and I hope they just start making a definition and go from there. Right. So I think that's great. Before we head off, you and I both are big coffee lovers. We've talked about this. I think you love coffee more than me, though, because you told me that you're actually starting a coffee shop. So tell me about this.
Yeah, well, actually, I love more like French pastries with my coffee. So, yeah, that's something I'm doing on the side. Like I moved into Florida like 2 years ago, and couldn't find some good bread out there. You look at the bread you buy, and there's like 30 ingredients with names that you can't pronounce. That's not right. We have to reconnect with our food. We're putting things in our system that are like just not good. So I started baking for my family, making some bread and French pastries from like traditional recipes, using only organic flour, water, and salt, and that's it. That's the only thing you should find in your bread. So if you buy bread and you can't read the label, there's a problem.
Right.
Go somewhere else. Something. And now we wanted to do something in our local community, and how can we have an impact to also share those values of, we speak about shoes. We can speak for days about our food, trying to educate people on how they can eat better in a more sustainable way. So yeah, we are looking at, I'm going to invest in a coffee shop close to our community. My sister is going to manage it, and we're going to go and source like some good coffee made in a sustainable way.
Exactly.
So you have to help me with that.
Happy to. We already talked about going to a plantation together and picking beans and talking to farmers.
Exactly.
That'd be amazing. That'd be a whole series of Kicks Over Coffee, right? That would take it to the whole next level.
Well, we can have next session, like live, like from the coffee shop.
Exactly right.
2 years down the road.
I would love to. I would love to. Well, I wish you great success in setting up the coffee shop. And I think it's a great idea, and I'm sure you'll be very successful. But I do want to thank you for coming on and for SGS to continue to sponsor our events, support our events, and bring a lot of very intelligent ways of thinking about sustainability, compliance, et cetera, on these issues.
Thank you, Andy. I know it's exciting to see the momentum, and there's a lot of good things happening. So hopefully the more we are thinking about it together, the further away we're going to go. So a long way to go, but it's exciting and promising.
I agree. Great. Thank you very much. And until next time, Kicks and Coffee is out. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.